Today is an interesting day where it's like we're caught somewhere between heaven and earth. And at one level, we are brought close, figuratively speaking, to the tombs of our loved ones. And at another level, the tone of our worship is trust that those loved ones are now, by the mercy of God, with all the saints and angels. And that presents a difficulty for the preacher in that some people may come here today with a disposition towards a bit of grief, while some may be more jubilant in celebrating the hope of the resurrection of loved ones united together before God, and be alert to a sense of the heavenly banquet or the heavenly wedding feast pressing upon us in the here and now. So it's hard to know where to pitch an All Saints, All Souls homily. I was inspired, as ever, by the teaching of Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount today, in which he unfolds something of the Jesus manifesto or ideology. Ideology meaning the system of ideas and values associated with a particular movement. It's also worth getting clarity around the word blessed that he uses in this section. The Greek word there is makarioi, which carries the sense of a special state of being owing to divine favour, which can also have the markings of positive external indicators. And I challenge you to find a drier definition of blessed than what I just said. But I think it's accurate. I think that's pretty accurate. Special state of being, owing to divine favour, also markings of external positive indicators. Now, an interesting thing, keeping with dry Greek, is the tense in which Jesus speaks as he describes these beatitudes, these blessings. It's all present tense, as though he's not describing what will be, but he's telling us what is actually the case already, even though it not be visibly obvious. So the grammar in Greek is what is called indicative. He's simply describing a state of affairs. However, I think a fair reading of reality is that it would be more accurate to say that this state of affairs is the complete opposite to what is demonstrably the case most of the time. Taken away from Jesus' own authority, this is a series of highly dubious claims, if you take it away from Jesus' authority. So think through it point by point and ask to what extent each could be considered mostly true in the here and now. Some are more likely than others. For someone who mourns, chances are they will be comforted. Not always, but the chances are they will be comforted. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. You know, that does seem true enough. But then, I actually don't know how pure of heart I am, and yet I would say that I have seen God in some way, in the sense of experiencing the presence of the Lord with some intensity. So I'm not sure how pure of heart I am, but I still think I have seen God in a way. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Yes, called children of God by God. Absolutely. But there is an alarmingly very widespread phenomenon of awful human beings, in no way peacemakers, being considered children of God by other human beings. So, in ancient times, the classic case would be the emperors of Rome. Remember in the order of service a couple of weeks ago, there was that photo with the coins, and it had the emperor's picture and Son of God. It's the same thing. It's an imperial category. Think of situations in which you've got guru cult figures called children of God by other people, or political leaders who attain almost messianic worship. And I can't help but think of the 45th President of the United States on that front. Blessed are the peacemakers. And just saying that, it is very hard not to think of one of the greatest Christian, sort of, films of all time, The Life of Brian, which I've somehow managed to refrain from mentioning for most of my preaching time here. So there's that scene of Jesus on the Mount with people at the back straining to hear, and they mishear him saying, "Blessed are the cheesemakers." And at which point one woman says, "What's so special about the cheesemakers?" And her husband responds, "Well, obviously it's not meant to be taken literally. It refers to any manufacturer of dairy products." But just after that, there is another funny little outburst where a woman comments, "Oh, he said, blessed are the meek. Blessed are the meek. Isn't that lovely? They have a hell of a time." And seriously, the meek do have a hell of a time. That's the point. The meek do have a hell of a time. That is exactly the kind of insight into the Sermon on the Mount that I'm getting at. This Jesus manifesto is beautiful. It's how I would like the world to be. It clearly isn't. And yet, Jesus is saying, this is actually the way things are. These people, these situations are blessed in Jesus' eyes, in his kingdom, the kingdom where the saints triumphant rejoice forever. That is actually the way things are. Now, I do try and live my life with this kingdom in view. I do so mindful of the saints who have done the same, and of all the other souls who have tried with varying degrees of success and failure to be kingdom people. If we recognise that what Jesus speaks about, that is the actual reality as God has framed it, this is how God says things are meant to be, then that must be what we are on about. It has to be. And in doing so, we demonstrate love for God and neighbour. If that is the true reality, then that is what we must be about. The late Bishop of Winchester, John V. Taylor, he was celebrated as a poet and prophet, once reported a version of the Beatitudes that goes quite differently. And I say he reported it because I don't know who it originally goes back to before him. But the point is to offer an extreme contrast to Jesus' teaching, and I guess just invite you to consider what you would prefer to be the case. So the version he reported goes like this. Pathetic are those in any sort of need, for they are obvious failures. Pathetic are the sorrowful, for they embarrass the rest of us. Pathetic are those of a gentle spirit, for they shall be kicked around. Pathetic are those who hunger after justice, they're crying for the moon. Pathetic are the ones who show mercy. Everyone will take advantage of them. Pathetic are those whose hearts are pure, for they will miss all the fun. Pathetic are the peacemakers, for they shall be called wet, meaning weak. Pathetic are those who suffer persecution in the cause of right. We're sorry for them, but they set themselves against law and order. So take your pick. Those pathetic lines are just all too real it seems to me. But if we take Jesus seriously, and I think we should, of course, that is not a good or true state of affairs. That is not Jesus' kingdom. That is the kind of world that people shape. And at that point, it would transition very nicely into a sermon on sin, but that's not for today. I'd like us today to hold in view Jesus' kingdom, coloured by the Sermon on the Mount, and the hope that our loved ones, they're at home in such a reality. That's home. We're going to come on later to remembering them in the way we knew them whilst alive on earth, and ask that through the loving mercy of God, the souls of the faithful departed may rest in peace.